Hey Gig, how you going?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I love this movie so much. I already seen it three times.
Really? You saw it three times?
I've already seen it three times. I know. I
I don't
know.
think I haven't talked to anybody who's seen it three times. That's fantastic. Thank you for watching.
No, thank you for making this. I always enjoy your movies, and I always imagined that you would be making another Wormwood movie because I've seen those films too. But let's tell us what where the original idea came from for Sting.
Well, it was sort of born out of my own arachnophobia. So I live in Australia where, there's basically every second thing's trying to kill you. We've got poisonous snakes, giant crocodiles, giant great white sharks, and spiders the size of dinner plates. Like we got a funnel web over here that can kill you in 3 hours if it bites you. So like it's the perfect place for a horror filmmaker to grow up because everything is scary. Um, and so spiders, I've always been terrified of. Like I have a visceral reaction to spiders. I have proper arachnophobia. So when I was trying to think of like the scariest creature that I could come up with, I just couldn't think of anything scarier than a spider the size of a bulldog. So here we are.
It's quite amazing as a horror filmmaker. I always imagine you guys aren't really afraid of anything when you're making
It's
these.
the opposite. No, it's so funny because everybody thinks horror filmmakers are like psychos who are just like, yeah, let's kill everything. And it's like, no, no, no. We're like very sensitive, scared people. We're the kids who didn't want the light to be turned off when we were children. Like we've made like a career out of taking our anxieties and our fears and throwing them at you guys. So actually it's the opposite. We're more sensitive, not less. Yeah, generally.
Now, because I've seen your past movies before, particularly with Wormwood, and I find Sting to be quite the opposite because Wormwood was like out in the country, out in the outdoors, that type of horror setting, and now you put Sting into a much more confined setting. Could you tell us about your transition into something like this and the challenges for you as a director?
Yeah, I mean, like I made the Wormwood films. All my earlier films were with my brother, so he and I have a very specific. His favorite film is Aliens, and so he loves things where they're running around with guns and shooting and big action. I like those movies too, but my favorite is Alien. And so Alien is in a confined space, like a single location, and I like the restriction of that. I actually find the claustrophobia helps horror, not hinders it. And so, yeah, this is the first actual proper Kiah Roache-Turner film where it's not a Roache-Turner brothers production. So, in a weird way, this is my first film as a filmmaker working in a solo capacity. And so, yeah, the difference between Wormwood and uh, Sting is very much the difference between my own aesthetic and me and my brother's aesthetics mixed together. Um, yeah, I love single location horror. I love them. Like Alien is one of the greatest haunted house movies ever made. And instead of a ghost, it's just got this like hideous H.R. Geiger created sort of insectoid alien that's like just disgusting. And, the only thing that's as scary as that to me is, a spider. And to me, when I first saw Alien, like I didn't know what he hid the creature so well in Smoke and Shadow that I thought it was like a spider or like an octopus or something. And that's why it's so surprising at the end when you see it and you're just like, oh, that's just a guy in a suit. I thought it was like 10 foot tall with tentacles. And so yeah, I'm very much inspired by Alien for this film's aesthetic.
Well, then tell us about working with Weta on, creating Sting for your film.
Well, working with Weta was amazing. Richard Taylor's always been like a huge hero of mine. And it was weird because I already felt like I knew him because I'd already watched like all the behind the scenes of all the Peter Jackson movies ever made. I'd read all these books on Peter Jackson. And so like I just watched Richard Taylor interact with on set things for hours and hours. And when I met him, I just like it was like working with somebody that you'd known all your life, and we just went straight into a back and forth repartee. We both spoke the same language, the language of horror and the language of loving filmmaking, and the language we just turned into two, happy school kids playing. And that's Richard is my favorite type of filmmaker, in that he's so excited. He's been doing this for like 40 years, and he just can't contain his excitement at the idea of making a giant spider. And it's that kind of passion and energy that just drives a filmmaker. So as soon as I started collaborating with him, it just became one of the best things that ever happened to me, So first of all, I was talking to a hero and working with a hero, but I'm like, oh, dude, I like this guy and I think he likes me. And it was just such a beautiful, it was a beautiful period. It's and he gave me, the two things that the producers and I talked about at the start was like, if the spider doesn't work, we don't have a film, and if Charlotte doesn't work, we don't have a film. So when I got Richard on board and he started building the spider, I'm just like, okay, I don't have to worry about the creature. We're good. Now all we need to do is find, the most talented 12-year-old girl in the world, and we did with Lila Brown. So we lucked out twice. So at that point, I just knew that the only person who could stuff this movie up was me. And so I better come with my A game,
So what was there a particular way to direct puppetry, I want to say, with the spider for yourself?
Yeah, it's really difficult. I'm an indie filmmaker who's, I've made a lot of zombie movies and demon movies, and all my stuff is guys in suits or prosthetics or human beings running around. And the human being is pretty easy to direct, They tend to do what you say. A puppet can do 6 things, and very slowly. And so what I found with this one was that anything I planned for went pretty well. If Weta and Richard and his team had kind of tested it, it was good. But anything I tried to improvise just didn't work. We didn't have time, because I only had, 6 weeks to shoot this entire film. And it was a very, very logistically difficult film to make. And everything took so long. I remember watching a behind the scenes thing of like The Thing, and you're going, oh man, they're spending like almost half a day on one shot. I had 45 minutes to get a shot, you know what I mean? And that was it. We had to move on. So yeah, it was very difficult, but because of the professionalism of Weta and the puppeteers, and just the fact that I had an amazing crew and I had planned out almost every shot of the spider quite meticulously, we got through it and pretty much got everything that we needed. Yeah.
So, how many different versions and sizes of Sting did you guys ended up with?
What did we have? We had a giant head with mandibles that we could shove at people. We had the giant body and legs, so the whole thing was built, and that was puppeteered by I think 5 different people. 4 people on the legs and body, and maybe it was 6 people. It was 4 people on the legs, 1 person shoving the body back and forth, and then 1 person, doing the mandibles. So it was a whole team. Anytime you moved it, like there were a lot of different moving parts. And we also just had just the legs. So, a couple of different puppeteers could just thrust legs at people, like when the spider's clawing. And I think that's what we had built. Yeah. And then every now and again, we had to build a digital version so that when we cut to a wide shot and it's scuttling around on the ceiling or whatnot, then, that would be fully digital, but only in the wide shots. If it's a close up or a medium, it was always the puppet. Oh yeah. And we had a stunt puppet that we could throw at people.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I always love to ask our horror directors, and I think I know the answer to yours because I've seen so many movies. It's always the debate between practical and CGI, and I want to say you love the practical side.
I do. Yeah. There's always a big question mark over the digital. It's more difficult to control. And sometimes you run out of money in post, so you can't get the digital that you were hoping for because it's the last thing that happens. And so progressively on an indie film, the money and the budget gets smaller and smaller. And eventually you end up with people going, oh, you know how we said we could do that shot? Yeah, we can't do that shot now. So if you've shot it practically, just from a budget perspective, like what you've got and it's in the can and it's good. but aesthetically, that's a big thing for me, just as a filmmaker. Like, you hear Christopher Nolan and, Denis Villeneuve, like they're always talking about practical. There's something about photographing a real thing in a real space that is magical and better. And especially, it's especially important when you're dealing with horror, because horror is a tactile medium. You're scared of things that you can see in front of you. And if you feel that like it's a digital creature with no gravity or weight to it, then 20% of your brain immediately disengages. That's called uncanny valley. And, uncanny valley, that might be okay when you're watching a Marvel movie, but when you're watching a horror film, it can kill your film. So you've got to be very careful about the uncanny valley effect. And so the way that I solve that is by just minimizing my digital requirements. Having said that, the work that Cumulus did on the digital spider was phenomenal. Like, I was blown away by how photorealistic it was. So, all of my worries were unfounded, really. But I still stand by the practical elements, because when you've got a giant spider clawing at an actor and they're shrieking and screaming and the thing's hissing and real saliva is flying out of the fangs, that's why you make horror films, moments like that.
Well, people who love horror films will certainly love Sting. So, hey, thank you very much for speaking to us. And I want to remark that the most terrifying scene is the discovery of the cat. I mean, that I could not get that image out of my head.
Yes, I got a lot of flack from my wife about that. She's like, I can't believe you killed the cat. I'm like, I killed like 5 people and you're worried about the cat. And she's like, don't kill cats anymore. She was very upset about that. But I'm like, I had to kill something. And nobody gives a crap about the parrot for some reason. But yeah, the cat really bothers people, But yeah, that was that was a fun one, and a wonderful practical effect done by MEG from Sydney. They gave me a really wonderful dead cat. I tried to keep that one. I was like, can we keep it in the lounge room? My wife's like, no, get that thing away from me. So yeah, I don't know what happened to that dead cat, but yeah, it was a fun moment.
It is very fun. So thank you very much for speaking to us. Really appreciate it. Next time.
Thank you, Gig.
Thanks so
I
much.
appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.